The antique locket felt ice-cold against Emma's trembling fingers as she pried it open for the first time in 20 years. Inside, where her grandmother's photograph should have been, stared back a face that made her blood freeze, her own face, but younger, wearing clothes she'd never owned, standing in a place she'd never been. The inscription on the back read, "For my darling Emma, who will understand when the time comes. V." But her grandmother's name was Catherine, not V. In the photograph showed Emma at age 16, yet she distinctly remembered this locket being sealed shut since her grandmother's death when Emma was only 12. Her hands shook as she studied the impossible image, feeling the familiar walls of her childhood bedroom closing in around her like a tomb. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, its haunting melody echoing through the empty house. Emma's reflection in the antique mirror across the room seemed to flicker, as if someone else was looking back at her. She had opened something that was meant to stay closed forever, and now there was no going back. Emma's mind raced as she examined the locket under the harsh fluorescent light of her kitchen. The photograph was undeniably real, not a digital manipulation or clever fake. She could see the texture of the paper, the subtle aging around the edges, the way the light caught the glossy surface. But how could she exist in a photograph taken before her birth? Her parents had always told her she was their miracle child, born after years of trying. Yet here she was, frozen in time, wearing a Victorian-style dress that seemed to belong to another era entirely. The house felt different now, as if the very air had thickened with secrets. Every creak of the floorboards above made her jump, every shadow in her peripheral vision seemed to move with purpose. She tried calling her mother, but the phone rang endlessly into the void. Her father had been dead for 3 years, taking whatever family secrets he might have harbored to his grave. The locket pulsed warm against her palm, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Sleep was impossible. Emma spent the night poring over family albums, searching for any trace of the mysterious V or clues about her past. Her grandmother's old letters yielded nothing, every signature read Catherine in the same flowing script she remembered from birthday cards. But tucked behind a loose photograph, Emma found something that made her stomach drop, a birth certificate she'd never seen before, yellow with age, bearing her name and birth date. The parents listed, however, were not the ones who had raised her. The names read Victor and Veronica Blackwood, dated 26 years ago. But Emma's real parents, Robert and Helen Pierce, had shown her a birth certificate before, one that looked nothing like this. Her mind struggled to process the implications. Had she been adopted? Kidnapped? The locket seemed to burn against her chest where she'd hung it, its weight feeling more significant with each passing hour. Outside, storm clouds gathered with unnatural speed, as if the very sky was responding to her discovery. The next morning brought no relief, only more questions. Emma drove to the address listed on the mysterious birth certificate, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The house stood at the end of a dead-end street, its Victorian architecture matching the style of the dress in the photograph. The current residents, an elderly couple named the Montgomerys, invited her in with surprising warmth when she explained her situation. "Oh, you must be looking for the Blackwood family," Mrs. Montgomery said, her eyes twinkling with recognition. "They lived here until about 25 years ago. Tragic story, really. They lost their daughter in a car accident when she was just 16. Pretty thing, looked just like you, actually." Emma's blood ran cold. Mrs. Montgomery disappeared into another room and returned with a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. The headline read, "Local teen dies in tragic accident." The photograph showed the same girl from the locket, the same girl who looked exactly like Emma. The newspaper article felt like a death sentence in Sarah's hands. According to the report, Sarah Elizabeth Thompson had died on a rainy November evening in 1998, exactly 2 years before Saracen was supposedly born. The details were sparse, but the similarities were undeniable. Same name, same face, same tragic ending. Mrs. Hartman watched Sarah with growing concern as the color drained from her face. "Are you all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost." The woman's words carried more weight than she could possibly know. Sarah excused herself and rushed to her car, her mind reeling with impossible possibilities. In the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of someone standing in the upstairs window of the Thompson house, a figure that looked remarkably like herself, watching her with hollow eyes. The drive home felt like a journey through a nightmare. Every red light seemed to last forever, every shadow on the sidewalk looked like it was following her. The locket around her neck grew heavier with each mile, as if it was trying to drag her back to a past she couldn't possibly remember. Back in her apartment, Sarah began to notice things that had never seemed strange before. The way mirrors sometimes reflected her image a split second after she moved. The way photographs of her from childhood seemed to shimmer and change when she wasn't looking directly at them. The way her dreams had always been filled with places she'd never been and people she'd never met, yet who felt intimately familiar. She pulled out her laptop and began researching everything she could about the Thompson family. Social media, genealogy websites, newspaper archives, anything that might explain the impossible connection. What she found made her question everything she thought she knew about reality itself. Marcus and Miranda Thompson had indeed lost their daughter, but they'd never stopped looking for her. Their social media profiles were filled with posts about their lost Sarah, shared photos of psychics and mediums, desperate pleas to anyone who might have information about their daughter's return. The most recent post, dated just 3 days ago, simply read, "She's coming home soon. The locket will show her the way." The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. The Thompsons weren't just mourning their dead daughter, they were expecting her return. But how could they know about the locket? How could they know about Sarah at all? Unless Saracen had never really existed. Unless the parents who raised her, the life she'd lived, the memories she cherished, all of it was somehow built on a foundation of lies. She tried calling her mother again, but this time the number was disconnected. The apartment she'd grown up in, when she drove past it, stood empty with a for rent sign that looked like it had been there for years. Her childhood friends' phone numbers led to strangers who claimed they'd never heard of her. It was as if Saracen's entire existence was being erased, leaving only the ghost of Sarah Thompson behind. The locket pulsed against her chest, its warmth now feeling less like comfort and more like a summons. In the fading daylight, she could swear she heard voices calling her name, not Saracen, but Sarah Thompson. They were calling her home. That evening, Sarah found herself standing outside the Thompson house again, though she couldn't remember making the decision to drive there. The locket had grown so warm it almost burned against her skin, and the voices were clearer now, a man and woman calling her name with desperate love and infinite patience. The house lights were on, casting long shadows across the overgrown lawn, and she could see figures moving behind the curtains. Her feet carried her up the front steps without conscious thought. The door opened before she could knock, revealing a middle-aged woman with graying hair and eyes that mirrored Sarah's own. "Sarah," the woman whispered, and the name felt like coming home and falling into an abyss all at once. "We've been waiting for you." Behind the woman stood a man who could only be Marcus Thompson, his face etched with years of grief and desperate hope. They looked at her not like strangers meeting their daughter's doppelganger, but like parents welcoming home a child who had been lost but never forgotten. The locket around Sarah's neck felt lighter now, its purpose nearly fulfilled. "We know this is confusing," Miranda Thompson said, leading Sarah into a living room that felt hauntingly familiar. Every piece of furniture, every photograph on the mantel, every creak of the old wooden floors triggered memories that shouldn't exist. "But you're our daughter, Sarah. You always have been. Death couldn't keep you from us forever." Marcus pulled out a photo album filled with pictures of the original Sarah Thompson, birthday parties, school plays, family vacations. But as Sarah flipped through the pages, she began to see her own memories reflected back at her. That camping trip when she was 8, the science fair where she won first place, the dance recital where she forgot the choreography and improvised. These weren't Sarah Thompson's memories, they were hers. Or were they? The locket was your grandmother's, Miranda continued. She always said it would bring you back to us when you were ready. When you were strong enough to handle the truth about what you really are. The room seemed to spin around Sarah as the impossible became undeniable. She wasn't Sarah Chen's daughter living Sarah Thompson's life, she was Sarah Thompson, somehow still alive, somehow still growing, somehow still becoming. As the night wore on, Sarah began to understand the horrible truth. She hadn't been reborn or reincarnated, she had never truly died at all. The car accident had left her in a coma, her body hovering between life and death for months. Desperate to save their daughter, the Thompsons had turned to forces beyond conventional medicine. The locket, inherited from Marcus's mother who had been known in certain circles as a woman who understood the darker arts, had been their anchor to keep Sarah's soul from leaving entirely. But souls, it seemed, couldn't be caged indefinitely. Sarah's spirit had broken free, creating a new life, new memories, new parents who existed just long enough to raise her until she was strong enough to return. The life of Sarah Chen had been real, but temporary, a beautiful illusion that had served its purpose. Now, as the locket grew cold against her chest, Sarah understood that her grave mistake hadn't been opening the locket at all. It had been believing she could escape her true nature forever. The Thompsons smiled at her with infinite love and infinite patience, waiting for their daughter to fully remember who she had always been. Sarah's story ends here, but the questions it raises linger in the shadows of our minds like whispers in an empty room. Was she truly Sarah Thompson, pulled back from the brink of death by supernatural forces and unconditional love? Or was she Sarah Chen, an innocent victim of a grieving family's delusions and dark magic? The locket sits silent now, its secrets finally revealed, but some truths are more terrifying than any lie. What do you think really happened to Sarah? Was her life as Sarah Chen just an elaborate construct, or did she stumble into a web of grief and manipulation that she'll never escape? Share your theories in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about this twisted story and whether you believe in the power of love to transcend death itself. If this psychological thriller left you haunted and hungry for more dark secrets, hit that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending stories that will keep you questioning reality long after the video ends. There are more mysteries waiting to be unraveled, more twisted tales that blur the line between the possible and the impossible. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.